Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is Embers Rekindled. Today we're going to be covering the beam cannon and a whole bunch of alchemy on how you can exchange it for other items. You should be aware that there is a possibility of disintegration during this video. Let's talk about some of the stuff we're really going to be focusing on today. That is the beam cannon, for starters. That is made with a bit of copper, ember crystal, Camonite bricks, and dawnstone, which we learned how to make dawnstone not too long ago. You will need to power it. It does take a bit of ember in it, so I do recommend that you probably put a funnel on there if you're going to be using it regularly, but if not, you can always just use regular stuff. I'm just doing it a little bit more so than normal in this video so that it'll be quicker to recharge for you guys. So this guy here, Mr. Like and Subscribe, is going to be our volunteer. I have set it up on a timer so that he will get destroyed shortly after me pressing this button for your demonstration purposes. Yeah, there you go. Pretty much disintegration. So you don't want to be in the way of that when that happens. Now, that aside, we're going to be focusing a lot on the exchange tablet and the alchemy pedestals and how they can be used to convert all manner of different items into all manner of different items. And that is by using the beam cannon as a focal energy point. So let's start with the exchange tablet. Camonite bricks, copper, dawnstone, simple enough. The alchemy pedestal, it's going to be pretty much the same stuff, but you need a block of copper tossed in there. And you'll need several of them. And you'll notice that there are different spots where things are actually located. Previous versions of Embers had things located in multiple spots on this one exchange tablet, and then you'd fill this thing with all sorts of ashes. Instead, you're probably going to do things a little bit differently. In this case, you can't put more than one item at a time in the alchemy pedestal top, and you can't put more than one aspectus on the side of it. You only ever put one item in an exchange tablet. And if you want to know what it is to use these things, you can always look up the exchange tablet itself in the JEI mod, or just enough items. Press U for uses and you can see you've got 10 pages of the different things that you can make with this, some of which we haven't covered yet, others we'll be covering today. In this case, I'm going to be showing you how to make Tyrfing, and this recipe may change depending upon your world seed, so you may have to experiment as well. But you will still need lead ingots, a block of coal, and a block of obsidian, and some kind of mixture of lead and silver aspectus. Now, aspectus are pretty much just ember shards tossed into some kind of molten version of the different metal types, with an ingot stamp being stamped into that, and you get an aspectus of that type. Now, I just happen to have a variety of them already set and ready. I also have a bunch of them put here. So once you put down the alchemy pedestals, if we look up how to make Tyrfing, in this case it is this recipe here, you need 4 different items on alchemy pedestals around the exchange tablet, which will hold a lead sword. Then in those alchemy pedestals you'll need to have some combination of lead and silver aspectus. Now in this case I just kind of guessed. We've got lead, silver, lead. Why not, right? And I do have a silver sword in the middle, just to show you that if you have something in place and it doesn't recognize a recipe for it, nothing's going to happen. But if you do have something in place, let's put a lead sword in place here. And yes, you can automatically fill these things, but you might have some stuff like stuck in the pipes, and then if you're wearing any kind of goggles or viewing device, then you'll have all these particles going on. So I recommend you just kind of put it in one at a time by hand, unless you have some automation going. But that aside, let's try pulling this lever, because I have obsidian, coal, and 2 lead ingots in this place here. We're going to pull the lever. You'll see that it is doing the stuff. I don't know what stuff it's doing, but we're going to find out if this is the correct recipe or not. And it was not the correct recipe. And you can see here that some of the items were used up in the making of Alchemical Waste. So it kind of melted that sword that was in there and used a couple of the materials up in the process of trying to exchange it for a Tyrfing sword, which didn't really work. But not to worry, Alchemical Waste is useful in a multitude of different ways. If you can find the right combination, you can actually make a code breaking slate on here as well, using copper and lead aspectus. as well as some Ember Grit. But that aside, I'm just going to show you how to use this because it's convenient at this moment. If you have Alchemical Waste by itself, you can right click and it'll say upon closer inspection you notice 2 glowing spots and 2 pale spots in the waste. Or you can just open up your code breaking slate, shift click this in here, and you'll see everything is kind of like it's showing you exactly what you have in place. And you can have several spaces in here. It's a game of Mastermind if you're familiar with it, and it shows you that you're close with some things, you've got all the right stuff, but you just need to kind of mix it around. If it was just black spots, then that's going to be something different, like you don't even have the right item there. And this is more or less in regards to the different Aspectus locations. It recognized all the ingredients, just that the Aspectus locations need to be switched around in some way, shape, or form. Now, because I've already done this at least once before, I am familiar with what the combination is. So I'm going to actually switch those around, and then we're going to try it again with another lead sword. After replenishing the items all around on the pedestals, putting a new sword in place, I can pull the lever again and it will activate, thus hopefully creating the sword that I want. And success. We have made Tyrfing, which is a fantastic metal wooden sword. It only does 4 attack damage, but if you look, it says deals damage based on the target's armor. So against enemies that have no armor, this is a very weak sword. Enemies that do have armor, typically bosses or specific types that might be just wearing some, a lot of the times this is the case in modded content, then it will do extra damage and it will actually pierce that armor. And I will show you a little bit more about some of what you can do with the waste, but first let's grab here a netherite sword, and I have a Volunteer. This guy here has a lot of armor and a lot of health. Takes a lot of hits to kill him with a netherite sword. No, it doesn't have sharpness on it, but you get the idea. His netherite armor is quite a bit to get through. Now, if I do the same thing and I use a Tyrfing, you can see in just 3 hits, he's done. And of course, I can always have a sharpness version as well, so that I can just kind of one-shot him. And yeah, the more armor they have, the more damage you're actually going to do. Okay, now that I've showed you this brand new sword that is kind of cool in certain situations, specifically usually against bosses or just armored foes, let's talk about the item here, Alchemical Waste. If I have this, there's actually a use that I can have for it. With a flat stamp, you can get ashes. So if I put this into a stamper that is currently being powered and everything like that, it then creates ashes. With these, I can of course create some different brick and stone variants for just decoration. You can use them as a fuel source for smelting one item at a time, or more importantly, you can use them for making things like soul sand and ashen fabric. First, I'll cover soul sand because the ashen fabric's just going to be a little bit different. But using this different process that we have here, mixing things up, using different aspectus or aspecti, as they may be called, I am unsure, changing up the ingredients and blasting it with a beam cannon, you can actually make a lot of different things. Things like netherrack. As you can see, just a little bit of cobblestone will get used up in the making of netherrack. And maybe a little bit of ember grit as well, which if you recall is just an ember shard that's been stamped. Going to that soul sand, you can actually make some from just some regular sand, but you will have to add some of that ash to it in order to do so. This allows you to kind of get a few of the resources from the nether without actually having to go there. But that being said, you can also mass produce archaic bricks. So sand being turned into soul sand being turned, and clay being turned into archaic bricks, thus allowing you a measure of more building options, but that's not all. Because not only do these ancient golems drop archaic bricks and motive cores, but you can actually make your own motive cores by using some of those archaic bricks and ember shards now with this alchemy process. And then taking that motive core with archaic bricks, obviously you've made your ancient codex most likely, but more importantly on an alchemy table you can make things like a wildfire core, which will require a bit of dawnstone, copperplate, and an ember crystal cluster, which is also another item that you can create on your alchemy setup. And that core is actually used for making all manner of different machines that I'll cover in a future episode if possible. But before we go that far, let's go over here to this, the Ember Crystal Cluster. Using it, you can actually craft a few certain items, which can of course be helpful, but I'm only going to be showing you the field chart. Using some of those archaic bricks and an ember crystal cluster, you can make one of these. It's pretty darn cool. It tells you the ebb and flow of the current embers in the area. So you can see it slowly is moving over time. So it's not just a stable spot. Your ember flow will be high and low. It will wave like the ocean. But it's not too bad, and it just looks really cool. You can always put down multiples if you really want. They don't exactly connect or anything, but it's just a neat item to have. And before I get too far away from it, let's actually talk about a few other things that you can make with the Exchange Alchemy setup, because I will still come back to the rest of the ash here. And that's going to be something like this, Isolated Materia. This is more or less a repair item. So if I take something like my damaged pants, and I put them in here, I can then get some flashy new pants, and it will just fix it. There we go. I now have my pants. I forgot to mention that the isolated materia is made with some clay, lapis, and nether quartz, plus a few asbestos. Remember, the asbestos don't get used up, so you only need so many of them. Next up, we've got adhesive. This is going to be a bit of bone meal and clay. We'll get you 6 of these. They're just handy for replacing the need for any kind of slime ball in your vanilla recipes, so you can make leads and sticky pistons if you so desire. On top of that, another really neat item is this, a Glimmer crystal. This is actually a mobile torch. You have 800 charges of torches, so you can actually click and create one. You see now it's at 798. I'm in creative, so it's not using up any of the durability, but normally it would, and that's pretty much it. But it's just really nice to have something like that, a really pretty version of a torch. But you can also use it to make something like this, a Glimmer lamp, which is made from Glimmer crystal. Which, in case you were curious, it does require a bit of nether quartz, gunpowder, and an ember shard for that crystal itself. And only a little bit of iron around that to make the Glimmer lamp. Now the difference between that, the lamp and the crystal is, first of all, the durability, so you get 400 more uses, and second of all, the fact that you can actually throw lights. So if I aim here, you can see you get this really neat effect to like throw down some light sources at random places. It doesn't go too far, but it is just really cool, and you can even have a light show with it with your friends. So now that we've got all these little things out of the way, let's talk about the main focus here. This cape, it looks really cool. It's missing one gem in the bottom corner here, but we're going to fix that, as well as this little outfit that is currently displayed on my person. We're going to show you how to make some of these ashen items. Basically, those ashes that you made earlier that you could use for making some simpler items, you can also use for making some of these more advanced items. Recipe for something like the goggles is just going to be some of this ashen fabric, dawnstone, and string. And you can see it just requires a bit of wool, some of the ashen string, and so on. Each one of these is going to be relatively simple because you just need to make the ashen fabric. Once you do that, then you already have some other ingredients that you can make too. Now these goggles have a tinker's lens built into them, so you no longer need to hold a tinker's lens to see things on these. For example, you can see the different particle effects of this going in or out, something along those lines. So if I grab this, I can grab some of these and you can see the green light is something coming in, the red light is something being stuck, and so on. Now you would still see the steam effect, but without the goggles it just looks kind of plain and you don't see any of those particles happening. That's what the Tinker's Lens does if you hold it normally, but it's built into these Ashen goggles. On top of that, you have your regular boots and stuff, which is very close to diamond armor, but not quite as good as it. But it does have some abilities that you can have added to this cloak that will allow you to bypass it. For example, one, everything is enchantable, same as any of the other armors. And second, the Ashen Cloak has those gem slots that you saw on the back, and you can actually enhance that by taking one of these cloaks that you make in Crafting Grid from some ashen fabric. You can add these Inflictor Gems to it in order to create a fantastical view of this. Let me take some Inflictor Gems here. I've got 7 different ones because that's how many it will hold. It'll hold 1 in the top middle and then 3 down either side. And you can have that plus a bit of string and your cloak, and you can get an Ashen Cloak with all of these different things. And each one of these has a different damage type that I've assigned to them by taking damage. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But by adding these to the cloak, it then will give you these items. If you, or it will give you all of the benefits of those all those damage types being reduced by 1/3 of what they normally would be, on top of any other kind of protections that you might have from the armor. If you want to remove them or replace them or switch them around or whatever, you just put it back into a crafting grid, take it out, all the Inflictor Gems are back in here. And all it costs you is 1 string in order to actually just reattach those. So now I'm currently wearing this. You can see it says MBT9 tag, so I have all sorts of different stuff going on with that. But if I make an Inflictor Gem, that's going to be some coal or charcoal, dawnstone ingot around a diamond. You might end up having to test this a few times because you've got 3 different asbestos types. But you will need to actually take some damage in order to test things. For example, if I were to start taking drowning damage, you can start seeing there, I'm taking it. I'm actually having it reduced as well by 1/3 because I already have that on my cloak, but I basically just assigned that to this Inflictor Gem. So I now will take 1/3 less when this is in my cloak's gem slots. And if you have one that has a damage type and you're holding it when you take other types of damage, it will overwrite that. So for example, I've got a dispenser with flint here, and I just did that. I took in fire damage, but there's also on fire damage, which is different. On fire is just the persistent one that keeps going. The in fire is just the initial burst of flame. So each time that happens, you may end up overwriting it, but you've got plenty of other options, wither and so on, that you can potentially end up assigning there. And just to give you an idea, I've got magic, wither, indirect magic, on fire, drown, in fire, and fall just on this set alone. So I even take reduced fall damage on top of the fact that I could add slow fall, or I could add feather falling to my gear. And don't forget that you can always repair it with these items. Not to mention you can also repair it with Ashen Cloak as well, but it does say that it will end up increasing the repair cost a little bit more. So there you have it. This is just the tip of the iceberg of the different things you can make in here. I recommend you check things out for yourself. I should be doing one more video on Embers Rekindled, and that should probably conclude the series. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, come visit us on Twitch, or visit our second YouTube channel, Mischief of Mice 2, where we post our VODs from Twitch regularly. Till next time, folks, I'll see ya.